Well, thanks for doing this today. I really appreciate it. Obviously, we're talking about your upcoming date at the Schermerhorn, and wanted to talk to you about Songs of Mirth and Melancholy.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that title come from? Where did you come up with that?
There's a Keats poem, and the poem, the title was Of Mirth and something, Mirth and Madness, or something like that. So the more I listened to the record, the more I realized that we had a couple of songs that were quite mirthful, and a lot of songs that were very, lachrymosy. So I sent out an email blast to my friends saying, trying to get the name of a title together, and it's going to be Songs of Mirth, and I need a word that rings with melancholy. And lachrymose doesn't work.
Right.
And I said, because, lachrymosity is just too long. That doesn't work. So my wife writes back, what about melancholy? And I said, well, no, I don't want melancholy. That's why I said I need a word that kind of rhymes with melancholy. And she goes, well, melancholy seems fine to me. I said, yeah, okay, great. And the more I thought about it and all these other suggestions came in, it's clearly like melancholy just kept kicking me in the teeth. So I said, well, all right, Mirth and Melancholy.
Right.
It is.
Is it a deliberate thing on your part when you go in to write new material to create a mix of all those different moods, or does it happen organically in the writing process?
Yeah, it's just, I'm really into whatever happens.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that, the job of a record is for the musicians to play the music well. That's basically our job. That's what our main job is to have a firm grasp on what the emotional intent of a song is and to execute it. This idea of records having themes really didn't start until pop music showed up.
Right.
This is a pop music thing. And the funny thing is oftentimes when I used to listen to recordings, when I look back on those recordings, the records didn't have the theme that people said the theme was. The only thing that had that theme were the lyrics.
Right.
And oftentimes you had songs where, and it's really amusing when I would hear the songs where the music of the song conveyed a completely different emotion than the lyric did. But in writing criticism, the critics would go with whatever the lyrics said and say that that's the tenor of the song. So it's not something that I really concern myself with. Our job is to write songs that we think are effective and to respect the emotional intent of the song and to execute that. So at times, yeah, it seems like it's all over the place, but it's not really all over the place because if the ideology is to just treat each song as an equal instead of forcing every song to fit into some preconceived ideology, that becomes the unifying factor.
Now tell me a little bit about the recording process. I assume this is basically live. Is that fair to say?
No.
Is that right? Oh, okay.
Not basically live. Just live.
Okay. Very good. Yeah, that's what's so cool about jazz. I mean, it's one of the last forms of music on earth that's not click-tracked up and overdubbed upon to such
I'm not sure about that. I know a lot of jazz records where they overdub like crazy, but
yeah.
It has the potential. Classical music is the ultimate of that. I mean, it's just, you got to play it, and whatever you play, that's what it is.
Right.
And in the dire circumstance, they'll overdub.
Yeah, it makes it a lot harder, obviously, if there's any sort of orchestral element to it.
Right. But yeah, that's what we try to do. We go in and we play. It was a 2-day recording. 85% of the material was recorded on the first day. On the second day, we did some touch-ups and played the 2 songs or something. That was it.
Mm-hmm. Wow, 2 pretty hectic days. How do you prepare for something that's going to be live like that? I mean, obviously, it's going to happen in the moment. It's not like going to band rehearsal,
It's just like a gig. Well, new songs we rehearse before we record them, and then once it sounds acceptable, then have a certain level of autonomy. But the one thing where they don't is that we have to be mindful of and respectful of the emotional tenor of the song. And everything is permissible as long as you are mindful of that. And if you try to use songs as an opportunity to show how good you are, I'll stop and take it.
Ah, okay.
And Joey's not going to do that. I'm not going to do it. So once we rehearse the song, then it's up to us to use our experience as musicians to create the song. I allow the song to just create itself. I don't really kind of mandate arrangements. It's like this thing that a lot of jazz guys do. They're going to do a recording and they start rehearsing 6 days before the record. I'm like, yeah, you're not leaving anything chance, are you? Jesus. Like, a recording to me is like a gig.
Yeah, it's a recording of a moment in time rather than...
Yeah, that's all it is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. There could have been any number of different ways to play that.
It's a document. It's not what a pop record is. It's not a product.
Right.
It's not a product. It's a document. So all it is a document. Kind of like those old Hendrix records.
Mm-hmm.
It's just documents, man. Those old blues records, those chess records, you just go in and you play.
Oh, man, yeah, that was back when recording was really recording.
And that's what it is. I mean, Led Zeppelin too, those BBC recordings, man, they were just in there fucking playing, dropping the wood down.
I know. I love those old records. You don't get that with click tracks, in my opinion. You just don't get it when everybody's all clicked up, and you just don't...
I don't understand. If records are being made at the same time, and that's about... If they're being made at the same time, I don't even understand why you need it.
Yeah, exactly.
I just think the biggest problem is that records aren't made at the same time. One guy comes in and does his tracks, and the other guy's on a beach somewhere, and then he comes in and does his tracks.
Yeah.
When you're not playing together, then click tracks are necessary. But if everybody's playing at the same time, there's just no need for it. Unless you're a really, really shitty musician. Then, okay, then there's a need for it.
And that's a sad commentary on where we are in pop music right now. I mean...
Well, it's...
Yeah.
The audience, the audience dictates this.
Yeah.
Like we could, before the music dies, there's this internet movie that's out there that a bunch of people have seen, and they really do pull a curtain up on somebody like, I don't remember these names because I don't pay attention to people. It's like a singer whose sister is a singer, and she's really bad. She did a national anthem or something and got booed at a college game. And but the people who like her, they love her. They don't care about any of that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And that's my, so it's like, especially me as an older person, sitting around spending all my time bitching about them. That's not going to change anything.
Yeah.
Because if more audiences craved real, authentic music, there'd be more of it.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
That's the long and short of it. I mean, it's the ultimate kind of capitalism. I mean, there's some of us who sit around and decry the lack of quality on television, when the reality is that if audiences agreed with us and demanded more quality shit, there'd be more quality shit on TV. But at the end of the day,
yeah,
you don't like that bottom-feeding stuff, man.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I know. It's the least common denominator of society. That's like reality television. It's boiling it down to just the dumbest possible thing you can broadcast, and it succeeds.
Well, reality has an extra special thing that I think that with most people who live in our country, they can think of nothing more glorious than being on television.
Yeah.
So it adds to that. You can sit there and watch it and say, shit, break here or there, that could be me. Because when you watch a video of Luciano Pavarotti singing, there is no way you invent a scenario by which that could be you.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
But what's going on now, the success thing is part of, he or she is one of us. We could be that person.
Yeah, it's not rewarding excellence, it's rewarding existing, basically.
Yeah. Well, it's fantasy. It's rewarding fantasy. I mean, and that's what popular music has become anyway. It's not really a musical expression. It's a fantasy.
Yeah.
And people are all in. That's why when you sit on a plane and the magazine I see in the hands of most women is like In Touch, or Elle, or Vogue, or People, or Us. This is where we are as a society right now. All these people want to argue about Obama and big government versus small government, but the average person, shit, they just want to know what Katy Perry's wearing. They don't, they don't care.
That is ostensibly true. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Even politics has become like a form of reality television.
Why the hell not?
If
you can find a way to take a complex issue and drop and reduce it to a couple of pithy statements, you win. So if the Affordable Health Care Act becomes Obamacare or it becomes death panels, you win. Because people can hold on to that. If you start talking about cost-benefit ratio and now, you forget it. It's over. We don't have that kind of education system anymore. People don't want to hear that. Just give me 3 words to tell me what shit is, and I'm either in or I'm not.
Yeah, it's sloganeering at its finest, absolutely.
There it is.
Do you find as the culture gets more and more shallow that it affects you in any way in terms of trying to get your music out there, or does the audience that appreciates your music stand true no matter what?
Well, the 2 things that are really interesting to me is that if I allow myself to become bitter of the culture, I lose.
Mm-hmm.
But if I try to invent a scenario by which the culture embraces me, I also lose. So what I have to do is being mindful of where the culture is. I just have to do what I do. I have to do what I do and have faith that there'll be enough people around to be interested in it or attracted to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's all I really got. And that's all that, I'm trying to remember the exact painter. They found the diary of a painter. And it could have been Matisse or it could have been Renoir. And he writes in one entry, sold 2 paintings today, now I can have bread with dinner. I mean, shit, it ain't that bad.
Right. Right.
But if a guy that great, if a guy like Van Gogh can go through his entire life not being able to sell a painting, only to have his paintings worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, this is what I chose.
Right.
And unlike Van Gogh, I had several opportunities to be in other arenas that would have rewarded me very handsomely, but I chose this. I have to accept everything that comes along with choosing this, and I think I do a good job of doing that.
What makes that the best choice for you rather than like a sideman gig with a pop artist or a TV gig, which you've done a little bit of each of those types of things,
Well, I enjoy being a sideman. I love playing with Sting, for instance. When Sting decides to take 2 years off, it's going to be hard for me to sell myself as the Sting sideman. And there are things that I want to accomplish in music before I die that requires study and work. And it's hard to do these things in your spare time. It's just hard to do them. And TV shows, as we kind of touched on earlier, it requires the ability to embrace a certain level of superficiality, which I have always struggled mightily with.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had to come to terms with the fact that it's not something that I could do. And it wasn't fair to the people who do it to have me basically throwing sand on the rails.
Mm-hmm.
The rails need to be lubricated for the train to go down the track. They don't need some guy throwing sand on it, slowing the shit down.
Yeah,
so
I understand.
it helped me understand. It really helped me understand what it is that I actually am.
Did you understand prior to accepting the Leno gig, for instance, did you understand how cheap a medium television is at its core, even when it's big budget like that?
Yeah, well, it's not, and this is where I had to get to a place to understand, it's not a matter of it being cheap, because the audience sets the tone for this. So, the biggest problem with calling it cheap is that it impugns Jay, it impugns the people whose livelihoods depend on the success of that show. When in fact, if the audience had demanded higher fare, Jay could flip the switch and do that shit in a heartbeat because he's a highly intelligent person.
I see what you mean.
Just at some point, if you're going to be in business, in show business, you have 2 ways of doing it. You can have a keen sense of where the audience is and be that for them, or you can take the tenor of I'm going to represent what the audience ought to be. And that's a fine line.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can find yourself out on your ass real quick when you take that line. Seinfeld was a success story that was almost an abject failure. Had it not been for one executive at NBC who basically said, I think this show has legs, we need to give it one more year. Because the first 2 years, the talk on Time Seinfeld was too New York and too Jewish, not working.
Right.
In that third year, and it was one of those few examples where they said, this is how we're going to do the show, or, we're going to do it our way. And it worked. But oftentimes, Conan did it his way, and look what happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Although I ultimately believe Conan was right, you have to have people around you who are willing to accept your vision and wait it out for the people to catch up to you. And what I do, I can wait for the people to catch up to me, because there's not all these market pressures on me that exist in that world. So it's just the idea, because there's so many advertising dollars and market pressures and ratings and all of these things are riding. Nobody there wants to really take a chance.
Right.
And the question was whether or not I was going to continue to be who I was, or if I was going to allow the circumstance to make me become a hybridized version of me. And the biggest problem I had was because we weren't using a fake name and we were using my name, I was kind of compelled to be who I am. Because my family and my child at the time knew me as me, and I wasn't really interested in becoming a new person with the name Branford Marsalis.
Let me talk to you a little bit about the internet, and it's not a recent invention, but it's relatively recent in terms of how it's impacted the industry. Do you find that a positive or a negative in terms of trying to put yourself out there?
It makes it worse,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't bother me. I love the internet. I love it. I mean, I've been able. Digital technology has allowed me to find recordings in the teens and 20s that simply would not have been available in contemporary analog technology.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that aspect of it. But the reality is that a jazz musician, basically, and a record company that signed them said, how do we find a way to get this guy's name out there amongst the tens of millions of people who buy records?
Right.
And now it's, how do you get your name out there to the hundreds of millions of people? Then all you have to do is look at, go to YouTube and look at Beethoven's Fifth Symphony and look at how many hits it gets. Then go look at Randall Speaks About the Honey Badger. And one has 10,000 hits and the other one has 7 million or 20 million. So how are you going to make Beethoven into the Honey Badger? You're not. So with art music, the problem is the same. And it's just what I've kind of learned and kind of instinctively believed is that, you can only control what you can control. And the only thing I can really control in this discussion, the only thing I can really control is how good my music is. How it is perceived or how well it does. I can't control that.
You won so many awards and been lauded in so many different settings. Do you ever find it intimidating to compete with your own past?
No, because it's past. I mean, I got to get better. Like I listen to all those records and all I hear is all of the weaknesses, and that's how I improve. So, if your perception of yourself and the value and worth of your music is based on how successful, in terms of people knowing who you are buying records, if that is your criteria, then yeah, it's hard to compete with that. But if the goal is how good am I as a musician, I'm so much better as a musician now than I was when I was more commercially known. That first of all, there's an argument to be made, like something George Foreman says about jazz. He said boxing is a lot like jazz. The better it is, the less people like it.
Yeah.
Like he understood that the reason people like heavyweights is because they knock people out. But if you're in there doing executing brilliant boxing, bobbing, weaving, jabbing, hitting on points, doing this feigning ducking, and you win on points, nobody wants to see that. They want to see blood and mayhem. You got that.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
And so there's an argument to be made that when I was a more enthusiastic musician and far less skilled, people liked the music more. And now although it's refined, I'm just as enthusiastic now when I play, except it's not that 27-year-old exuberance.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that, isn't this amazing that I'm doing this for a living? Oh my God. Now it's like, yeah, I'm good at this, I belong here. And I'm getting better.
I know you're very involved in music education. Is it something that you would encourage your own children to do, to take part in music as a career?
I don't think you should encourage anybody to do this shit, actually, unless they want to do it. My kids take piano lessons.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to be musical. I don't want them to be professionals. I want to do something else. You can use music because the thing that's great about music, all music really, but especially classical music and jazz music, is that it uses a lot of spatial learning. Because none of it is really physical, it's all spatial.
Mm-hmm.
And academics are essentially spatial. Very little of it is physical. We teach it in a rote fashion, and that's part of our problem. Math is actually spatial, yet we teach it in a rote fashion. Memorization. Memorize the timetables, memorize this, and then it gets to the higher forms of math that are less spatial. That's when kids start to struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have not really engaged that part of their brain that deals with the spatial. That's where the music is really good. And the reason I say jazz over the other forms of music is that the appeal of the other music makes more sense because the forms are so rote and repetitious. Like My Sharona is My Sharona. Bang, 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 bang. That's one of the reasons people like it. That, a guy who's a businessman or a guy who plays on a football team can pick up a guitar and he can play a Beatles tune.
Mm-hmm.
He can't write a Beatles tune, but he can play one. Most of these guys can't write a symphony either, but they can't play one either.
That's absolutely true, yeah.
That's what the difference is. So there's an appeal to being able to be in a band and play in a blues cover band or this cover band. Playing on a string quartet, forget about it. You sound like crap, and they know it. So there's something great about that, But at the same time, the thing that I love about people who do that is how they learn the song. They basically learn the songs from memory. They don't buy a book. They don't take lessons. They engage their spatial learning. And what I want my kids to play classical music for is that they have to problem solve in real time, because there's a lot of problems in music that can't be solved by anyone but yourself. And the more difficult the music, the more complex the learning curve. And that's going to help them in any business that they're in. It's going to make them be able to manage their stress better. They're going to be able to problem solve because they will already engage problem solving in spatial.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why a lot of people freeze when they encounter certain situations, because most of the way we educate our children now is in a rote fashion. And everything is based on grades. Everything is just like leave no child behind. The whole thing is based on grades and points and qualifications. And when kids do poorly on a test, they say, well, the solution is they need more studying. When actually the solution is they need more general learning. If you spend a lot of time in Europe, and you can see how European students, if I had to use a generic kind of generalization, Western European students know a little about a lot of things, and American students know a lot about a few things.
Okay.
And that is one of the reasons that we struggle on these tests, because these international tests reflect a general sort of understanding of intelligence and a general sense of knowledge. So I could go to a small town like Stavanger, Norway. This really left an impression on me. When I talked to a teenage kid who was a jazz student and a fan, and he says, where do you live now, New York? I says, no, I live in Durham, North Carolina. He says, North Carolina? I don't know where that is. And I said to him, it is 850 kilometers south of New York City. And he looks into the air, and he says, ah, yes, I see it. He says, ah, yes, I see it. And I think, damn. Now, you switch that and say, we in Nashville. And they say, what? Or New Orleans, it don't matter. I'm not picking on Nashville.
Right, no, I understand
Or
what you...
and say, I'm from Stavanger, Norway. They say, where's that? Well, it's, 500 miles, north of Oslo. Where's that? It's in Norway. There's that.
That's right. Well, America is the world in American speak.
Well, in our country, it used to not be like that.
Yeah, it didn't, but it is that way now. It really
used to not be like that. So what I'm saying is that this is the reason we do lousy on these international tests.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we are. It's just that, it's like we got things going on. Just this whole new mentality. American exceptionalism. I love that because it doesn't mean anything, but we say it. Do you believe in American exceptionalism? I said, well, what does that mean? In math, no, we're not very exceptional. In science, we're not very exceptional, even though we are. We have scientists who are brilliant, but a lot of our science, our industrial science, is filled with Chinese and Indian workers because the Americans have been so bad at it.
Yeah.
So American exceptionalism becomes an ideal as long as it's not put into practice.
It's funny you should say that. I actually had a conversation with a friend recently, and I told him I only thought that America was exceptionally lazy at this point and exceptionally ignorant. And I'm talking about from my generation down, mostly.
Hey, man, you get no argument from me. Well, I think what we ultimately are is we're just exceptionally incurious, and that's our biggest problem.
Yeah.
We're just not curious about anything. We don't like being forced to think. We get very pissed off when people. I mean, I watch my students when I ask them questions, and when they can't answer the questions, they just get angrier and angrier.
Mm-hmm.
And because I have them in a controlled situation, I'm like, this isn't going to work out well for you, because you got to deal with me. And then by the end of the year, they're more engaged and more appreciative. Most of them.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them. They're more engaged, they're more appreciative. But I see it. I see it in our television shows. I see it in everything. I see it in I'm 51 years old, and I see me as a 50-year-old with parents my age trying to communicate to their children instead of dictating to their children.
Mm-hmm.
When, people ask me things like this. Somebody said to me, well, what do you think about Lady Gaga? I said, it doesn't even matter what I think. I don't listen to that. I saw Madonna. She was the original. I saw it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and they say, well, so you don't think Lady Gaga's good? I said, I'm sure she's very good. The point is that I'm 51 years old. What the hell am I looking like? Following the music of a 20-something,
Yeah, you're not exactly the target audience for that, right?
So when you got people my age making themselves the target audience and wanting to have, just when I'm around 50-years that want to have a conversation about Lady Gaga, I don't even know what that means.
Right.
Other than, please, I want this to be as superficial as possible.
Yeah.
I want this conversation. I want to walk away from this conversation with whatever sense of myself I have intact. You know what I mean? It's like so let's just keep it light. Let's not talk about anything substantive. Because in my family and in my friends and everything, we talked about religion and politics and everything else, and nobody ever got mad. It got heated, but there wasn't anger.
Right.
It's something my father taught me. He said, because he was talking about politics, and I didn't know the answer to something. And he says, don't get mad, son. Get informed. I said, why are you mad? The only reason you're mad is because you don't have an answer. Go get an answer, and then we can talk about this. I couldn't wait to crack open those books and get after his ass. Because that's what Winton and I would do. We said, man, we're going to bust Dad, man. We're going to get him this time. And then we get him and says, really? Well, what about this? Like, damn. All right, go get another book.
That's awesome.
So then when I went to college and I started bringing this stuff up, guys was getting mad at me. But see, the difference is I can't tell my 19-year-old colleague, don't get mad, get informed.
Mm-hmm.
I can't, I could, but that ain't a way to win friends. So basically you realize, you say, well, damn, I was lucky, but I'm not going to bring this stuff up. You have parents who guide you, whether you know they're guiding you or not. And we learn these lessons. And the lessons we learn are almost always wrong. And then at some point, you're going to have to find the inner strength to repudiate the lessons that your parents, and your parents are a metaphor now, not your literal parents, your uncles, your aunts, things people tell you, sweeping generalizations about people, that they never met in their lives. People who make derogatory statements about Chinese people, not knowing any. And then, as happenstance would have it, God sends you to China and you meet these people, and they are completely the opposite of what you were told they were.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's confusing, but at some point you have to be able to say the words, yeah, they were wrong about that. into trouble because it's like the whole thing is, well, they couldn't be wrong. They're my parents. So then the confusion sets in, and the anger sets in, and all this other stuff sets in. And as a musician, I was just lucky enough to be raised in a family because I didn't really play jazz as a kid. No, I didn't really play. I didn't play the shit as a kid. But my father kind of intellectually raised me in a way that was completely open to the idea of playing jazz. Because I was, insatiably curious, and I was willing to learn from other people. And I was always okay. I always left a crack in the door. There was always a crack in the door. This is what I believe, and I believe it fervently, but I could be wrong. So when I was 40, I have a friend in the jazz community who's a jazz record, and I went on his radio station when I was 25, and I said a bunch of crazy shit. And then he didn't invite me on his show for 15 years. And then he asked me a question, and I said the question, and he goes, well, that's not what you said when you were 25. I said, dude, I was 25. He said, are you really going to try to hold me responsible 15 years later for some shit I said when I was 25? I said, the great thing about being in your 20s is that you can be completely wrong about something with absolute impunity and certainty.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. That's not because, youth is not wasted on the young. That's the beauty of being young. Because you are wrong with assertiveness. And now, I admit it. And now I admit, it was just, I've evolved. It's different. That's what I like about my life. That my life is a continuing pattern of growth.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the opposite of even my friends professionally, where they go to school to develop, to become a specialist in a division, and then for the rest of their lives, they become that.
Right.
They don't allow themselves possibilities to say, well, I'm going to study this because this might lead to something else. They kind of shut it down. It was all about getting a job, being complacent, and getting settled, and it's that thing, And I feel lucky because I've never really had that. But every time an opportunity came, I was playing with Blakey, Wynton calls, go play with Wynton. Went to playing Sting calls, go with Sting. Leave Sting, come back, start my own band, go to the Tonight Show.
Mm-hmm.
The Night Show leads to classical music. So now I have an absolute strong idea about what it is. More importantly, I have a sense of what I want, but I have a really strong sense of what I don't want because I've tried it.
Mm-hmm.
I know what I don't want. I know what I am, and I know what I need to do to continue that. But I know it out of experience, not just out of some blind fear. So I feel lucky.
Well, that's great. Very few artists, unfortunately, have that strong of a sense of themselves.
Yeah, don't remind me about it.
Well, I know you've got to wrap up, but can you give us a little bit of a preview of what we can expect from the Schermerhorn show?
We're going to do some duo tunes, and we're going to play some quartet tunes, and it might be stuff from the record, it might be stuff from the new record, it might be old Louis Armstrong tune. We just go with whatever the flow is at that time.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, thank you for doing this today. It's been really, really fascinating.
Good to talk to you, bro.
All right, thanks.
Talk to you later.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.